Um, wow, what a day. I've been waiting for this for so long. I'm
Yeah.
really glad. I'm so happy. Hey, we're
I
here
was
now.
so excited.
I'm so happy we're here now. So I'm
Yeah.
going to do an introduction of what the session is about and what the BMF is about. And obviously an introduction of you, Norutando. And then we'll kick off the session and just have like a conversation. I'll just say right now what the conversation is about. So, yeah. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our BMF Center and Young Professionals event. Today we are sitting with Unolutando Zulu, very interesting woman. I'll introduce her shortly, but these sessions basically is something I want to call conversations with young leaders, conversation with thought leadership, conversations with self-starters. Actually, something I picked up from Nulutando. She's a self-starter. So yeah, welcome to the session. The purpose of this talk basically is to talk about the underrepresentation of women in executive roles. And this talk is a continuation, if I could call it that, of a talk that started a while back. Obviously, so many other people have spoken about it, and I feel that we are going to speak about it until some sort of action, is done, until some sort of solutions come to the fore, until the issue either changes or moves or something. So these conversations about women in executive roles and how they're just not sitting there, they're not at those tables, or there's not enough of them at those tables. So that's what the conversation is about. And I mean, this is a very dear issue to Unolutando and us as the BMF, because we are really interested in young professionals. We are really interested and passionate about developing young leaders. And this is one of the issues that we need to address, because we need women and we need our young women sitting at these tables, having these voices, being able to make these decisions in corporates, being able to make these decisions in non-governmental organizations as well. So that's what the talk is about. And without launching into a PR campaign about the BMF, I do have to, say what our goals and our mission are. So the Black Management Forum is really interested and it is really invested in developing and in empowering young people and empowering leaders, managerial leaders at that. And so as the young professional division of the BMF, we really want to kickstart the youth into leadership roles at an earlier age. I mean, we've been doing this corporate, infiltrating corporate for a while now as people of color, as young people. So that's basically what we're about. We're about developing leaders. And part of that is we develop managers across all sectors. And interestingly enough, when Nolusan and I first met, we both agreed that the BMF is not really that present in the mining sector. And that's not our intention. We don't want to be saturated in what people always think we're in the finance sector. That's not it. We want to be everywhere. And hence, this conversation. And I'm hoping more conversations in different sectors. We want the engineers, we want the lawyers, we want the accountants, because almost each profession or almost each sector has managers. That's just basically what it is. Yeah, so that's just the small PR I had to do. Yeah, and with that, tonight we are hosting Nolutando Zulu, and I'm just gonna go into your bio for like a bit, okay? So she started off as a geologist, right? Um, at the Royal Bafokeng Platinum Mine. And then you just did a stint in like the sector. A stint in the finance sector, and you were a research analyst, and you were also an equity research analyst. And then you went to what I believe is one of the jobs you enjoyed the most at the PIC, because you Yes, like you loved it every time I spoke to you. You just like,
I mentioned the PIC, yeah.
like, so you were a senior analyst there, right?
Yes,
And finally you're like, actually, I want to go back to mining.
yeah, yeah.
You didn't just like go back to mining. You went back to
No.
like biggest mines in South Africa. I was like, I want to go there. I'm not coming
Hey,
back
I'm
to
not going
that
back underground. I'm going there.
on, you know? And so this is where you are now, your current role as the executive associate to the group director, right?
Yes.
Anglo-American South Africa.
Yeah. Who is no stranger to the BMF?
Yay.
Out there. Yes.
But I mean, what a CV. What a CV.
It's I'm still building it. There's still a long way to go to where I would like it to be. But I definitely tried my best to equip myself with different skill sets and different tools to be able to handle myself in this current role that I'm in right now. And I speak so highly of the PIC because it brought to light so much of
Mm,
what the conversation we're going to have to talk about today is, and that's the being surrounded by women, and being surrounded by women who just display excellence and make you realize that when women are given the opportunity, they really can do amazing things. So I'm really excited just to be here today and speak to this specific topic.
great, great. Before I ask you to just give us a summary or just a short intro to your study, I just do want to give a disclaimer that, I mean, we are not experts on the subject of
Yeah.
women in executive roles. We are just two young ladies having a conversation, two young ladies who want to start a conversation that other people should join in, that on that day they spoke about this. Now we need to take it further and we need to put something in action. I like practical solutions. And I would like that this conversation starts something where even if we don't come up with the solution that will be the one, somebody will be like, you know what, they spoke about that. So I think we should take that and do it this. So that's just, yeah, guys, we're not here to tell you what women or how women are represented, because it's a study, right?
Yeah.
We do a study, and I mean, yeah, so please don't hold us up here like next week it's like, Mara, you guys said, no, it's not that kind of a conversation. But yeah, before I give you the platform, Nolutando, I just want to introduce the fact that how we came across each other and to this conversation is I saw a talk you did about your research proposal for your master's, and the fact that you are looking at the, let's say, the number or lack of women in technical roles in the mining sector. And I feel that it probably would be applicable to other sectors as well. So that's basically how the conversation started. But it is definitely, this is not a mining indaba. We're not talking about
Yeah,
mining. We're just talking
I
about.
won't speak about the raised underground and
Because
I won't go into that detail. Then you're like, how do you mine gold? No, it's not that kind of a conversation.
Oh my goodness. So over to you, Sando.
Yeah, so firstly, just thank you so much for having me on your platform. The BMF is an incredible institution. I work for someone who was the CEO of the BMF. So it means a lot for me to be recognized by this institution and to be asked to be here today. So firstly, I just wanted to say it's so incredible that we're having this conversation. As I was about to turn the volume on the TV down, which has been on CNN for the past 3 days, they said something and they said, we're so focused on Joe Biden, who is probably going to become the next president of the United States of America. What we are failing to discuss, which is shameful, is that we're about to have the first female vice president.
Okay.
And so we are having this conversation as the US is on the cusp of really seeing a woman get into a role that a woman has never been in before. And it was incredible for me to see CNN catch themselves and say, we forgot a very important part, that history will be made. So it's an honor to be here on this day, and knowing that those celebrations are possibly coming soon. Just to give context with regards to my study, I'd like to talk about myself a little bit. Always my favorite topic.
Oh,
So I never grew up being taught to be a feminist. I never grew up being taught that you have to fight for your role in the world as a woman. I grew up seeing feminism in action. My grandmother is the head of the household, and my grandmother was a nurse, and my grandmother had 1 million side hustles. And with all the money that she was able to come up with, she was able to buy us a house in the suburbs in the early 90s. We were the first Black family on our street. And then seeing my young mom go off to university and study, and seeing my aunt also do the same, go off, study, buy a house, and provide. I never understood that there's a world where women are not leaders. I did not have that concept, because all I saw was women taking the role of leadership and women doing it with such excellence and grace. It seemed very natural to me.
okay.
On top of that, I was sent to a girls' school, Maristella, in Durban, and I was surrounded by young girls who were excelling academically. Yeah, some young girls who chose to take the sports field. I mean, I remember when I was in grade 11, we had a hockey team that had an unbeaten record the entire year. It was the #1 hockey team in Durban. My principal was a woman who just drove excellence in everything that you do, and all my teachers were women. So growing up, all I saw was female excellence. That's all I was surrounded by. It's all I knew. It's all I understood the world to be. Fast forward to university, in my honors class, studying geology, a career which many had deemed to be a male career. There was 15 graduates in the honors class. 10 of those were girls and 5 of those were men. So the concept of having to work for your place as a woman didn't really hit me until I started working. And I went from this bubble in which I had been in, of going to a girls' school surrounded by all these amazing girls, to a mine where, where you walk in as a 22-year-old young graduate, and a white Afrikaans male says, "I don't want her working in my section. I've been mining longer than you've been alive. There's nothing you can tell me." And for the first time, you realize the world is not a nice place. I mean, at the age of 22, I, for the first time, realized that the world is not what I thought it was. It was the first time I woke up to the fact that sometimes, as a woman, you have to fight to be seen. Something that I had never had the concept of before. So, as I was working in the mining industry, again, it is a very, very male-dominated industry. I realized that there were very few women around me. Not only were there few women around me, there were very few women in positions which were very senior, so executive roles. You go on the company website, and you see the CEO is a man, and the woman will have a role as head of HR or company sec. And as much as that bothered me, the primary concept I had was, I just need to work hard and prove myself, and I'm going to do well. And I did. I worked very hard, and I still found I was not making my way to the top as fast as I was hoping. I thought by 30 I'll be CEO. Don't we all? I was like, I'm 25. I'm still not a CEO. What's going on here? But I realized it's not just me. It's other women in their 40s, in their late 30s, who've been working in this industry for many, many years, who are just struggling to break that supposed glass ceiling. And I then moved from the mining sector, and I moved into the financial services sector. And when I was working on the sell side again, I was working with a lot of white men. And then I finally got a job in 2017 working at the PIC. And that's really for the first time where I the chief financial officer is a woman. Okay. The head of the consumer portfolio, which is the largest portfolio in the listed equities team, is a woman. The general manager of external managed funds at the PIC is a woman. And I looked around the property team, all three ladies. So I looked around and again, I felt like I was back at Maristella. I was surrounded by women who were not only excelling, but doing it so graciously and so gracefully that I was like, well, why is this not happening in mining? And when I was embarking on picking my thesis topic, that's when I decided to focus on what are the reasons that women are failing to rise within the mining sector. And when I looked at some of the women who had done very well in the financial services sector versus the mining sector, I was getting very angry and very emotional. And I was just talking about how mining hates women and just jump to conclusions. And I have an incredible supervisor, Tanya Marshall, who's also a female geologist. And she said to me, it's very important that you don't talk from an emotional standpoint, but you talk using your facts. And she said, the first thing I need you to do on this thesis journey of yours is to look at the historical context of mining in South Africa and look at the historical construct of how mining companies were built in South Africa. And the truth is, the mining sector, like many other sectors, including financial services, were built for men. Because historically, industry knew that the man works and the wife stays home and takes care of the children. It's a historic legacy that we all know about. Our great grandmothers did not work because it was just a norm that the wife stayed home and took care of the cows and the cattle while the men went off and worked and came home with the money. So that historical context already shows you that when building certain systems, men's needs were taken into consideration. For example, in the mining industry, if you're working on an underground mine, you have to be underground at 6 a.m. Whether you like it or not, 6 a.m., you have to be underground. When you're a mom, you can't be underground at 6 a.m. because you have to drop your child off at school. And chances are school opens at 7 a.m. So it means you can no longer stay in the mining industry when your life evolves. And that is one of the reasons why this study was so important for me, because it showed that there was a lot of construct that went in to ensure that the industry was comfortable for the needs of men. But as women were coming into the sector, industry has not evolved to take into consideration the needs of women. So over time, what then transpired in South Africa, for example, we had actually a law that stated that women are not allowed to work underground. And then eventually the law was banished and women started working on mines. But like every other sector, because men had been at the core of building that specific industry, women were first brought in as support. So I'm not too sure if you know the TV show Mad Men. It's about the TV ad agency industry back in the 60s. And you see that the industry was built by men and the industry is run by men. And the women are brought in to support the needs of the business and support the men who run the business. So it's very important to have that historical context because it provides us with the reasons why we are where we are today, because women were brought in to support. So the need now came to run the human resources part of the mining sector. That's a job that can be done by a woman. Yeah, sure, you can come in. You can't go underground, but you can help us with our human resources. You need someone to run the secretarial desk. You can't go underground, but you can do that. So that's how women were seen in many of the industries that we now work in. So it's taken time for the industries to evolve and say, women are not just a support. Women are
Yeah.
also have the capabilities, experience, and education to be a part of the core function of the business. And I think it's very important to point out that we have seen it be done. You and I both know female CEOs. And I have the honor and the pleasure of working for someone who I deem a South African icon,
Yes.
a female CEO who leads with so much dignity and strength that I get to see a female leader every day. And it says to me, I can do it too. And so because we have seen it, we know it is possible. But the question is, what are companies doing to evolve from where they were in the 1960s, where women just served as support, and taking into consideration that women have come into the sector, women have educated themselves, women have gained the experience, and now women are on par to take on the same roles as men. And so another thing that was said in one of the studies that I read or the 1970 studies that I read is that there was something called employer bias, that a lot of the times companies didn't want to hire women or minority groups because you did not want to hire someone who was an unknown. If you are a predominantly white firm, you don't know the productivity of a brown person. So there's a fear of bringing them in because what if they don't perform as well as your other white counterparts? If you're a predominantly male firm, you're not sure if you want to hire a female because of the bias that you have that, well, we don't know the productivity levels of women. Therefore, how can we bring them into the fold? What if she falls pregnant and then we leave, which is another bias that many companies had. So when you look at the historical context, it really does provide a lot of answers to why we are where we are today. So it's very important to have that historical context because then you can have an intelligent conversation as to why women are so underrepresented in core strategic roles in companies today.
So my concern is we're a couple of years down the line, hey? And we're having more and more females, more and more women sitting at these tables. And for me, if you just think 1960, we in 2020,
Yeah.
surely we must be taking steps, even if it's baby steps, acknowledge what is happening. Because when I look at it, like for instance, the issue of mental health and sexual harassment, those get dealt with on a regular. We have workshops for days. We will have workshops every week, and diversity. We will have workshops about diversity, but we're not having workshops about this particular issue, as well as the age issue, that why aren't we hiring younger people into these executive roles, firstly? And secondly, why aren't we acknowledging, well, we're acknowledging that we're having more women because we are promoting it, right? BEE says we must promote it, so we're promoting it. We are getting all these women into the tables that matter. But now, why are we not making everybody else aware that, guys, this is actually what we should be doing to accommodate? I was reading an article actually this morning. Somebody on LinkedIn was writing about what men should be doing in the office, or I say office, during COVID, to support the women in the office. He listed 4 things. I can't remember them, but his point was women go through a lot.
Yeah.
COVID made it worse because now she's at home and she has to take care of her kids, like they're here. And she has to be in this call, right? So men should be like, calling them on the side, like, are you okay? Checking up on them, being their sponsors even when they are not there, So clearly we acknowledge all of this, but I feel like we're not doing enough. We're not having enough awareness. Like I said, everything works at a workshop, mustn't it? Like seminar.
Oh, at a workshop, it all works. Yeah.
Everything, it works
What
there.
are the practical things that are being put in place? And I think you've hit the nail on the head. in the sense that there is a lot of work that companies do to ensure that, hey, sexual harassment, please, everyone must be coached on it, because nobody wants a lawsuit on their case. Nobody wants a case where it's like, this person looked at me strange or spoke to me in a very like sexual way. So companies throw money at sexual harassment courses. Companies throw money at mental health, as they have been in the past 8 months with COVID. Courses, and of course I work for an incredible company, and we've got this huge diversity and inclusion workshop that we do, which just speaks to the fact that, as people, we're different with different skin tones, languages, but we're all here to work together and for the better of the company. But I think what had happened was, when women started being introduced into the workforce, men were not sensitized to women's needs. They were just told, don't grab their bums, don't whistle at them, just stay away from them, But like you're saying, a lot of women have actually said now that they found the workload to have increased during COVID, having to work from home. Why? Because their manager thinks, you're at home, you're not doing anything, I'm going to send you an email at 6 p.m. saying, can I have this by 10? Which is completely unfair. So I'm not a mother, I'm not a wife, I don't like to speak for people, but I do know that in our industry, and I think in most sectors and in most companies in general, men are not told to not make snide comments when a woman says, I have to go and pick up my child from school because he fell and broke his hand. Those responsibilities usually lie with the woman. As a man, you can stay at work the whole day and not pick up your child because the chances are your wife is going to do it. Well, that woman that you're working with is someone's wife. And a lot of the times, companies don't teach men about the sensitivities of talking to female staff. I actually know a friend of mine had said to me, when she felt pregnant and she told her manager, he said to her, let me guess, you're going to pop one out every year now.
Oh, wow.
And those are the things that discourage women from having conversations with their managers about their needs. Women feel like, maybe I shouldn't put my hand up for that project right now because I'm pregnant. And they're going to say to me, you're going to want to leave early. Women hold themselves back sometimes because they don't want to not be able to leave early because they might have to go and pick up their child at 5. So let me not put myself in a position where I might have to leave late. And when I ask to leave early, snide comments are made. And that's why there's a lot of work which needs to be done internally in companies to really make everyone aware and sensitive of the fact that women have more than one job. The job that you are at right now, 9 to 5, is the job that pays you. But women go home and they take on 2 to 3 other jobs. Women are chauffeurs, women are chefs, women are a whole bunch of other stuff that I cannot say here, but women do so much, jobs that don't pay. And as long as men don't take that into consideration and make snide comments like that, that's one of the key issues that companies need to really address. Mental health is very important. Sexual harassment is very important, but ensuring that women feel comfortable in your working environment is also critically important. So a lot of work still needs to be done, and companies really need to be incentivized to really sensitize their men to the experiences of women. But I must add, what COVID-19 has done is that it's highlighted that to a lot of men, because a lot of men right now are at home with their wives and their 3 kids, and they are saying, I did not know how hard it was. I did not know that my wife works this hard. Men are now seeing that women work at home. men are now seeing what their wives go through because chances are their wives work as well. So this is now hopefully going to make men realize my female colleague isn't being lazy when she says she needs to leave at 4 o'clock. She needs to leave at 4 o'clock because there's another job that she does outside of this one.
I mean, now that we've touched on this motherhood, right? I'm a mom. I'm a mom. I'm a young mom, firstly. I'm a single mom, secondly. And I'm also trying to climb, the corporate ladder.
Hey, this ladder.
Exactly. So it's a whole lot of things, right? And you right when you say, when I leave, because I need to pick my daughter up at 3 o'clock, you're right.
Yeah.
So between 3 and 6, I'm not even available for work because now I must get home, I must cook,
Yes.
And
bath her.
And pay, I need to make sure we're ready for school for tomorrow,
Yes. Homework.
When we were in lockdown, like strict lockdown, people had to do homeschooling. The first hour of the day, like guys between 8 and 9, were like, please don't set up meetings. I need to homeschool my kids. And that was mostly the females, the women at work, So there's a whole lot of other things. But one of the important things, which I think we should be discussing as well, is the biological clock, versus the corporate ladder clock. Because the time when you're supposed to, or optimal time to be having a family, to be having kids is, between 25 and 35. Because God, you have a child after 35. But anyway.
I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just looking at my watch like, oh goodness, I need to get started.
So that's the time when you're supposed to be climbing and you want to get into management, right? Because you also feel that strain of, like you were saying, you are 25 and you're like, I'm not CEO already,
Yes.
That's counting as well, because you're like, oh my God, I don't want to be a manager for the first time at 40,
Yeah.
Those things are playing in the background. And it's like, okay, guys, what can we do? We need to do something to address this. So that one, I think we could spend a whole day speaking about
and we could. And, I think I watched a Sheryl Sandberg TED Talk, and she said, it's very important that women are not talked out of having children. It's very important that no one guilts you out of having children. It's important not to plan your life around children. For example, she mentioned the fact that she had a young woman ask her about how is she going to balance motherhood and, working. And Cheryl was like, oh, are you expecting? She's like, I don't even have a boyfriend yet. And then she was like, well, then don't think about it. Well, just do your work and don't think about it. And the reason why she was saying that is because a lot of times women, once they get married or once they're engaged or once they become young mothers, then impose a barrier onto themselves and say, well, now that I'm a mom, I can't apply for that role because it's going to mean more hours. Well, now that I'm married, I'm eventually going to have a child, so I might as well not expect that role to be given to me because I'll have a child in 2 years and then the 2 years isn't here yet. So I think what's important about motherhood, and again, I because I am not a mother, I don't want to speak for mothers, but I think what's important, and having friends who are successful women in corporate who are mothers, is before being someone's mom, you are Ayanda. I am Lulutan. You have dreams, you have aspirations that you cannot put on hold or you cannot put aside because being a mom is now your life. And for those women who do want to do that, that's great, because to me, feminism is women doing whatever they want to do without judgment. So that I want to put that out there. But if you're a mom and you want to continue with your career, you need to set boundaries for yourself in your career and boundaries for yourself at home. And when I say boundaries for yourself at home, I mean, you need to have realistic expectations for what you can and cannot do. If you're a young mom and you know your daughter has swimming lessons every Friday, it's very important to say, I would like to go every Friday at 12 o'clock, but I can't. And by communicating with your children that mom has to work, mom has a job to do. So when your children know that mom is a working woman. They understand when you're not there and communicate to say, I will not be coming on this day. Your child is not going to be upset that you didn't come when you told them. All children need is for you to be transparent with them. And I think women should not put themselves aside and put their dreams and aspirations aside for their children, but rather think of it as when you are thriving in your career, when you are happy, your children look at you and want that for themselves. As a young mom, when you're doing well, your daughter looks up and says, look at what my mom can do, and I want to do that too. So I think a lot of times people don't understand that when you are at your best, you're also a fantastic mom as well, and your children have something amazing to look up to.
You know, we were speaking, I think, before the session that with regards to awareness now, right? Firstly, actually, we were speaking about, it's so strange when you come into a meeting now during COVID and your male counterpart will tell you, guys, you know, my kids are here or my dogs are in the background. If you hear a noise, don't mind it. Whereas mostly women will just come into the meeting, and then once something happens, then she has to explain, or then she feels the need to explain, oh, I'm so sorry, guys, my kids are at home, right? And you were saying that it's probably because women are so apologetic.
Yes.
If I could put it that way. And which comes down to also awareness. Like, I'm gonna be scared, obviously, to say this at work, you know, with okay, guys, you know, everybody knows I'm a mom. Like, if you know me, you know I'm a mom. I tell my daughter all the time, you work with me, you know. So it shouldn't really be an issue that guys, you know, I need to fetch my child now. But I mean, for awareness to happen, we need to speak, right?
Absolutely.
For awareness to happen, we need to be open and be like, guys, can we have a family-friendly environment, or can we have a, you know, whatever the case may be? So I feel that, I mean, it's one of the questions, or the question that was raised in the Q&A. Guys, we do have a Q&A, please use it. That do we not as women have to re-engineer our mindset, our thinking? And which I think that is quite relevant, but also a big thing about awareness. We need the people around us to know this is actually what happens, because we only tell half stories, you know? Like, you come, you're tired. I mean, I was just telling my boss that my daughter had to submit 2 projects on Monday. So on Sunday, you know, because kids are kids, and
kids will tell you on Sunday, Mom, I have a project due tomorrow. Yeah.
So on Sunday.
That was me. I was that child, so I know.
Exactly. So on Sunday, we were out doing the project. So obviously now, I mean, on Monday, I'm just like, oh, guys, I'm tired. Hey, like, how can you be tired on a Monday? You know? Yeah. So the fact that we have to tell half stories so that we don't seem like, first of all, I don't want to seem like a bad parent. Like, I did the project the day before, you know? Judged for that, first of all. Let's just start there. And there's so many other things that, you know, because of the way I think women think as well, don't want to be seen a certain way.
Yes.
So over and above the fact that we might have to re-engineer the way we think, you know, our mindsets, for awareness to happen, I feel like we really need to be honest with the people that are around us. But actually, guys, this is what it takes. This is what I do to get home. So don't mind when I send you an email at 11 o'clock when you're asleep. But I just like started working because my daughter slept at 8. And then between 8 and 9, I was just trying to relax, you know.
Relax, reset.
And now at 10, I'm out here typing this opinion.
Typing emails.
And even I'm like, I forgot to respond to that email from yesterday.
Yeah.
And now I'm sending you an email at 1:30 in the morning, you know. And it seems like, no, she can't manage her time, but it's not that, you know. So we have to be quite open about what it takes in order for the awareness to happen.
Well, that really, for me, boils down to corporate culture. And, you know, anyone who's read my boss's book, Boardroom Dancing, shameless plug, you know, she talks about corporate culture in the book. And as a company, and that's why I think it was very important for me to lay down the historical context of companies and how most companies were built with men in mind, is that because most companies were built with men in mind, that cultural aspect of knowing that a woman might need to go home early has not been taken into consideration. And that's where companies need to do the work. They need to do the work and look at how is our culture conducive for women? How is our culture conducive for mothers? How is our culture such that men understand that a woman needs to go home a little bit earlier? And that really, really just boils down to, what a company's values are. But I think what's very important, as you'd said earlier on, is both you and I are not experts on why women aren't at the top. It's a conversation that needs to be had. You and I have made observations that there is a lack of representation in women in key and core strategic roles. And unless we talk about it, unless we continue to bring the numbers and the stats out and the facts out, we are going to stay where we are. But companies need to know the needs of women to be able to make the relevant changes. And forums like these, and I hope forums within businesses themselves, invite young women in to have those conversations. I remember seeing a quote that said, "Not about us, for us, without us." So most of the time, the conversations are made by white men in boardrooms without us. But we need to be included in the conversation to understand what is it that we as young women need to thrive within a business, because we don't just want to work, we also want to rise up this corporate ladder and take on those executive roles where we are making those strategic decisions.
I think that just going back to COVID, right? I think it came at the right time. Obviously, there's always something to learn from any crisis. And there's been so many lessons, and I mean, we've touched on them, how men are now starting to see actually what it takes to be like, to
run a household and work.
Exactly. And also, if anything, for me, is that companies can see that their employees can work from home,
Absolutely.
and hoping that there will be that mind shift of, why do you have to be working a whole 8 hours if you can accomplish, what you need to accomplish? So for the mothers, or for, who need to be like, okay, guys, just for this one, I need to like watch my son play soccer.
Yeah.
I'm still gonna do my work.
Yeah.
So if anything, COVID is showing that actually people can do what they need to do without being at the office, firstly, and disciplined people. It's a person thing rather than like generally your employees would not. So if we can see that, oh, okay, actually Unorotano is thriving working from home, can't we allow her that 2 hours that she wants to go and watch her daughter, So I feel like there's quite a lot that we're going to still learn from COVID. And that's why I think it just came at the right time that actually, guys, let's rethink this whole working thing. You can see that companies don't really need to be at the office the whole time in order for them to work. So same concept, something practical, guys. This is a practical solution.
A practical solution. And you're right. And you're right in saying that, I know a few companies are actually doing something called the new way of working, in which they are actually looking at having schedules for the work week, where you can come in on Wednesday and Thursday, or come in Thursday, Friday, if need be that you need something at the office. Because companies have realized that the productivity is still the same. People are still producing their work, even though they're not at the office. So what this is doing is really presenting opportunities for companies to relook at old ways of thinking, and most importantly, understand that, women can be moms and do their jobs and be at home and still be productive and members of the team who are still contributing just as equally as everyone else. So I think there definitely has been a lot of negativity surrounding COVID, but there are a few very important key lessons that are going to come out that are going to be for the betterment of society. And I really hope that companies take a really hard look at how things currently work in their office structure and enable women to be able to work a more flexible schedule, allowing them to thrive as mothers, thrive at home, and still contribute to the company.
Just one thing I'm thinking about now. I think we had the conversation earlier this week about from a certain perspective or at a certain point, the higher you get, the easier or the more acceptable it is for you to juggle, your life, being a mom and, being a wife, as opposed to when you're still like junior management.
It's the support. It's the support. When you're an executive, you have a large team around you. You have people who are able to support you, and also there's a certain level of respect people have for you when you're sitting in that office. They know that you're not lazy. You really you don't have that much to prove when you've worked your way there. People know your work ethic. People know that when you say you need to go, it's because you need to go. It's not because you're saying, I don't want to be here. And I think that again speaks to corporate culture where women are just assumed to be trying to get out of something by leaving early, which is not the case. So I think that it's the whole point is when you are much younger and at a junior level, you're still really working at proving yourself. So it's seen as more of a, why is she leaving early? Where when you're an executive and you have people who support you in the office, and you leave early, you can ask someone to take on a task and you'll come back and you'll do it. Not that, executive women are not spoken about when they leave early, but there is a certain level of respect that they get because they've worked so hard to get there. They've proven themselves. They have a track record. No one's going to doubt someone who's got 20 years experience when they say, I need to go home to pick up my son. Nobody will be like, this one is lazy. Very, very few people will say that. But there still will be that whole thing of men will be men. Some men will be men and make those comments. But I think a lot of people have a lot more respect for you as a woman when you're a lot higher up.
Yeah, so corporate culture. I agree with
corporate culture is it's so important. It's, as I say, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Oh yes, I heard that last week actually. Yes, I agree with you. So I just also want us to speak about how women see themselves, right?
Yeah.
Okay, actually, before we get there, just while we're speaking about the fact that at an executive level, there seems to be a little bit more respect. When you are trying to get there, right, you need support.
Absolutely.
You have some support. When you're trying to get there, you need probably more support, I would think, So it also brings in the situation of mentorship and sponsorship, right? Because you need the support, some support to get you there. And I always say this to people that whenever I go to talks, I feel like a lot of accomplished women
they're the same thing.
They'll tell you like, oh my gosh,
work hard.
This is what I went through. This, this was my process. And I'm like, okay. So when I leave, I'm like, but what must I do?
What did you say again?
What's the practicality of what I must do, So I feel that mentorship and sponsorship, or mentorship more than anything, is one of the things that would probably give you a better understanding of what you must do and how you, because now you're sitting on this one-on-one situation with your mentor and it's like, okay, honestly, tell me, what am I supposed to do, to get here? So I also just want to point out that a lot of the women I've met always say, always get a male mentor. Always get a male mentor. And I'm wondering whether the people who are ahead, whether or not the conversations they're having with these particular people are not of benefit to them. But my point is mentorship is quite important, right? And also the right mentor. Anything. And not it being just, like I said, a tick box exercise, like a legit, how did you get here? Like what need, like not a, I'm trying to find a solution from someone else, but I'm just trying to understand how to get there. It just being practical though, not being airy fairy, do this, do that, or you can balance it. Okay, how? You know, so how important, maybe let me ask you, because you are in this wonderful position you're in, how did mentorship help you in getting where you are?
So I think there's been a lot of studies that have shown that, women don't have a lot of mentors. A lot of young women are out there trying to find their way. And in actual fact, a group of friends and I are in the process of building an app. It's called Bologna Women's Network, because of the fact that in our careers, we realized that we lacked female mentors, but we also noticed that we all thought we need to be mentored by Nolita Fagute. You all think like, because at the end of the day, she's a female pioneer, and it's very difficult to get access to a Nolita Fagute, which is one of the reasons why she wrote her book, because she understands the value of mentorship. She understands the value of saying to someone, this behavior will get you here. However, if you enhance this, this, and this will get you to that. So she fully understands the benefits of mentorship, and her book was her way of having a mass mentorship aspect to how she mentors, because she cannot take Ayanda and Tando and everyone else. So we realize that a lot of the times we just look at the top and we think that's who must mentor us. But there are women who are 5 years ahead of you. There are women who are 10 years ahead of you, who might not necessarily be a CEO, but might be in a senior management role where they can just guide you in certain things and in certain ways. So with the construct of this app, it's really having young women come on and look at someone in their sector who has, is a few years ahead of them. So people who are much older are going to come on and register as mentors, and young women are going to come on. So it's like a Tinder process. You're going to go on and choose. So Ayanda, she works in tech. Okay.
Swipe left.
So swipe left. I don't want her. So we're trying to build that because of how important we understood mentorship to be. As a young woman working in the mining industry, I didn't have a mentor. And I got into a lot of trouble when I was working on the mine, because I didn't understand how to conduct myself in a professional setting. I was raised to say what's on my mind, and I went to a school where, again, I mentioned earlier on, I went to a girls' school where no one said, as a woman, you can't talk. Because you just say what you gotta say. And I remember being a young graduate, and I was in a interview process, sort of, with like some senior geologists, and my chief geologist said something to me, and which was wrong. And instead of laying down the facts and correcting him, I was like, excuse me? I did the head roll. I did the finger. I did the, do you know who I am? I was, because that's, I have the right to speak most. So I just spoke. And in doing that, I held myself back. every single person who was a graduate with me in the geology graduate program was appointed before me. I was the very last person to be appointed because I was a graduate who thought I was a big shot and could do and say whatever I want to say.
Mm.
I did not have another woman or even another person who was more senior than I was say, this is how you conduct yourself. Not
Yeah.
to say that you must water yourself down, but there's an approach in which you have. And one of those is not to be emotional, but to be factual, especially in a work setting. So understanding that my career in the first 3 years was held back because I didn't know how to talk
Sure.
is for me of it's mentorship is of paramount importance because I think a lot of times we're looking for mentors to tell us how to be CEOs. But what you need is for someone to tell you how to move from step A to step B. Because that every time you're moving forward, you're moving towards that specific role. So a lot of times when you're a graduate, you want a CEO, Maria Ramos, to mentor you, but do you really need a Maria Ramos when you need to learn the basics of how to conduct yourself? So I think that's what has been of paramount importance to me is understanding, as a young woman coming into corporate, you need a mentor, but it's also very important to be practical about the type of mentorship that you need. Because as a 31-year-old woman now, the mentor that I need today is different to the mentor that I needed when I was 21 because my life has changed and I've progressed in my career to a point where I'm now looking at, how can I become an executive? Where what I needed when I was 21 was for someone to say, when you walk into a meeting, you don't drag your feet. When you walk into a meeting, you read beforehand. You understand the person you are going to be talking to. You understand the level at which they know the information and you conduct yourself in this manner. So I think mentorship is not only of paramount importance, it's the right mentor at the right time. So that's a big piece of advice that I can say to any young woman who wants to make it in corporate is find a mentor. And I remember we had a young graduate a few years ago, and she reminded me of myself when I was 21. She thought that she's this hot girl who knows everything. When you come out of varsity and you got your A's, no one can tell you. And I'd say to her, girl, when you go to a meeting, don't take this, don't walk like that, don't carry this, don't. And she hated me. She hated me because she thought I was trying to tell her what to do.
Yeah.
And over the years, she actually turned around and she was like, I didn't realize that you were mentoring me. And I was like, because I want you to do better. So I have had mentors at different levels. My mentor now, unfortunately, is a man because of the fact that I am in the mining sector and the mining industry is well known to be male dominated. So he's a much older gentleman who is a South African mining icon. So I look at him at how do I conduct myself at this level and in the role that I am in. But speaking to mentorship, what's more important, well, not more, but just as equally as important as a mentor. And a mentor doesn't even have to be someone who is in your company. A mentor can be someone who is just an older person who you have seen carry themselves in a manner where they've been able to succeed, and you want to understand what are the key foundational things I need to be able to move forward. What's also of paramount importance is a sponsor. And I know in my career, sponsors have helped me get where I am. I was listening to a podcast last week where a lady from Old Mutual, she's an executive now, she said that she applied for a role a few years ago, and a very senior role within the company. And she knew she was qualified, she had everything. And when she didn't get the role, she was like, well, why didn't I get the role? She asked someone who was in the meeting. And the gentleman said to her, because no one said your name. No one said your name in that meeting when we were discussing who's the final candidate. And so it's very important as a young woman in your company to say what you want. It's very important that people know that Noluthando wants to take Dolita's job. It's important that people know Because if people know what you want, people are going to remember that Ish Tando wants this job. And on top of people knowing what you want, it's important that you have people who are going to vouch for you in that. Because when someone knows what you want and they know your work and they know what you have done, and it's also very important to say, this is what I want, and ask the relevant people, if this is what I want, how do I get there? You are the CEO. I want to be the next head of tax.
Yeah.
What do I have to do? And when the CEO says you have to do X, Y, Z, you go, you do it, you come back and say, I've done it. When the role opens up, I'm ready. As long as people know what you want and someone knows your name, that's already a foot in the door in that conversation when you're not there. Your work speaks for you, but a sponsor will also speak for you whenever you're not around.
I'm so glad it's touched on sponsorship, because it speaks quite a lot to the very topic we're speaking about, that maybe one of the reasons why we're not having all these women in these boardrooms is because nobody's mentioning you.
Absolutely.
Up, like nobody's saying, actually, Unoluthando would be the perfect candidate for this.
Absolutely.
You know?
But you know what?
So,
for me, it's beyond being Nulutando's mentor. Sponsor. I think it's very important to have a sponsor within your corporate. If you are working for a company, there should be a senior person who knows your name, and there should be a senior person who knows what you want. And that senior person must remember at the back of their minds, if I don't speak about this girl in this meeting, she's going to kill me. But at the same time, for women who are in those boardrooms, for women who are in those executive roles, I don't expect you to be Nolutando's sponsor. I expect you to be a sponsor for women. Yeah. I expect you to do what Michelle Obama said, and that's not close the door behind you once you've got into the room. When women are in those rooms, they need to say, what are we doing to ensure that this room that we're in now has more me's in it? Where are the other young women in this company? And what are we doing to bring them into this room? So sponsorship goes beyond just knowing one person and vouching for one person. It's about pushing an agenda. And that agenda, which we're talking about, is ensuring that women, and even men can be sponsors for women too. Men shouldn't be complicit in knowing that they're in a room with one woman. They must ask, what are we doing as a corporate to ensure that this room looks like the population of this country?
So just one other thing, which is, it always comes to mind whenever we speak about representation of genders. And I think we spoke about it. It's from the book Lean In, where, is her name Sharon?
I think Sheryl Sandberg.
Cheryl, yes. And she says that it's so funny how men and women think. Yeah. Women will always, they will look at a post and say, oh, 8 out of 10 requirements. I meet 8. I don't meet the other 2. I'm not going to apply. And the guy will be like, oh, 5 out of 10. I learn the other 5 when I get there, you know?
Yeah.
That mindset in itself. And she was saying that she was on a project with a guy and they had to present, and she was extremely nervous. And she said, after they presented and everybody loved the idea, and she was like, oh my gosh, I was so nervous. She tells the guys and tells everybody, I was like, oh my gosh, I was so nervous. I don't know if like people are gonna like the idea. I think I was like, I knew it. I just knew like people were gonna
I killed it.
No? And it says so much about how we think as women, and so much how men think, you know? Yeah. And I think, honestly, this has been said so many times, if you can have the confidence of a white male, you would, you would go anywhere in life. Just the confidence. Whether or not you can do it, just, And I mean, I've been in a team where I was the only female, I was the only Black person, and I was surrounded by a white male. And even in a meeting, I would sit there and I'd be like, yo, but I do know the answer of what this client is asking, but I'm not sure. And you would hear the guy just saying something, and it's just like, I can't correct him. I can't correct him now because,
I'm just the client. Yeah.
It's a real thing. It's such a real thing. And definitely maybe there is like that re-engineering of the mind set that, listen, actually, you can do this,
And to add to that, I think that there are two aspects to the underrepresentation of women in executive roles. First and foremost, it is the fact that we are working in companies, and just working in general was built for men. And that's a fact. And companies need to do something about that. Companies need to ensure that they create environments where women can rise. As Nolita says, a lot of what you become is dependent on the soil in which you are buried. Your ability to grow. If you're in fertile soil, you will rise. But if you are in rocky sands, it's gonna be tough. I mean, it can happen, but it's tough. So companies must absolutely take accountability for doing their part. But it's a two-way street. As women, we have to play our part. No one is responsible for your career but yourself. And that's why I mentioned the fact that as a young woman, if you know that you want to be the head of that department, you need to live, breathe being the head of that department. Okay. Yeah. I know this, and again, I don't talk about myself, but I knew that I wanted to be in this role. And I did everything I could to be here today. And so I think a lot of times women go back to a lot of insecurities. Yeah. And it's a very complex psychological conversation that we could speak to for hours, but women are very self-conscious, and there can be an element of, like you said, I'm not ready. And I know many examples of women who have seen a post and gone, well, I could do it, but let me just get more experience. I know a woman who said, I mean, there's a general manager role, available, but I've only been managing money for X amount of years. If I could get just 2 more years, then I'll be ready for the role. But in 2 years, the role's been taken on by someone else. The advert has come out now. I mean, I've been in the same instance where a white man will ask him a question and he doesn't know the answer, but he'll say something. And with such confidence that you're like, yeah, maybe he's right. No, he's wrong. He's wrong. He just carries himself in the manner that I know what I'm saying. And that really boils down to a lot of things growing up as little girls, not being told that you are strong, not being told that you are right, not being told that you have the right to speak, not being told that your voice is important. It's important to not only find your voice, but to use your voice. And it's important to not let people speak over you and not let other people determine your self-value and your self-worth. Because when you understand those things, you put your hand up and you're willing to actually look like an idiot by taking a chance. A lot of times we have the answer in our heads, but what if I say it and it's wrong? And then everyone now laughs at me like, yeah, this girl, you know what I'm saying? That level of being self-conscious and worrying about what other people are going to say, worrying that I'm not ready, is really some of the reasons women have held themselves back. Yeah. There is a glass ceiling. I really want to say there is a glass ceiling, but how high up that glass ceiling sometimes is dependent on your vision. It's dependent on what you look up and you see. And if you look up and you're like, if I just jumped high enough, I could get there. If I just took the risk, I could get there. And I saw a study that said of all MBA graduates, 52% of males who graduate with the MBA go back to their company and say, I want a raise. Yeah. 17% of women who graduate with the MBA come back and say, I want a raise. That's a huge gap, which means men have the confidence to come back and say, yeah, I did the MBA, pay me more. Women are now like, well, I've done the MBA, so I should like work now. Now I must work for another 2 years, increase the CV. And that's not to say, again, all women are like that. It just, there is a level of wanting to be ready, wanting to make sure the answer is right in my head first before I say something.
Yeah.
Men just do. Men take the risk. Men take the plunge that a lot of young women are afraid to. And I think when I was working for my boss at another company before the PIC, he said to me, Tando, always ask. When you are given an employment contract, ask and say, is this the best that you can do? Because I actually would like to earn X. I am now leaving a bonus from where I come from. Are you willing to pay me a portion of that bonus? Or are you going to add that to the bonus in this company, which I'm going to earn? Men look at the terms and conditions of their remuneration and they negotiate.
Yeah.
Women say, I got the contract. So what I'm going to do is when I get there, I'm going to work for 2 years and then go and ask for a salary because now I've proven myself in the company. Yeah. But a man says, if you see my value and want to employ me in the first place, then you're going to pay me accordingly. But a woman says, let me get there and prove myself and then ask for a raise. And what my boss said to me, when you ask and say, can I have more money? The worst thing they're going to say to you is no. They're going to say no. They're not going to say, you are greedy. Give us back our contract. They're just not. No company's ever done that. They're like, we don't want to employ you anymore. You are greedy. They're going to say, no, unfortunately, based on the balance sheet or based on the circumstances of our HR remuneration policies, we can't do that. And then you say, cool. And then you make a decision if you want to work for the company or not. But there are just risks. And that's why I think the Sheryl Sandberg quote of lean in is so important. Is as much as we expect companies to do their part to ensure that the environment is fertile for us to grow, we have to put our necks out there and be willing to say, this is what I want, and this is how I think the company can help me get there. By putting yourself out there and putting your neck on the line, people see that, this girl, she really wants this. and that's unfortunately how many men have gotten ahead of us as women, is because they just took the risk. They just were willing to look stupid and be told no, where we thought I must first wait.
Yeah, because no hurts us, hey? Clearly it hurts us.
But then it's over. Then it's over. Then they know after you have it, then it's over. Then you move on.
Just on this difference between men and women, somebody asked the question in the Q&A that, but what can a male mentor understand, about a female mentee? Like, how would he even understand the dynamics, woman goes through the dynamics of how they would mentor actually a woman. Yeah. And I think it's a very great question.
Very good question. It's a very good question. I think I had I never really had a official mentor when I was at the PIC, but I was unofficially mentored by all the women that I worked with, because we would have conversations and they would. And I also, not only was I mentored by what they said, I was mentored by what they did. I was mentored by their actions. I was mentored by seeing them thrive through sheer excellence. But my male mentor is not one where it's a conduct conversation anymore. It's now an industry conversation. It's now, before I joined Anglo American, we had a full-on conversation of, is this the right move for where I see myself in 10 years? So it's I completely agree. And that's why I said you need a mentor that's relevant for the level at which you're at and relevant for what you need. And also, you can have more than one mentor,
True.
and mentor to mentors who cater to each need that you have. Because I have my male mentor is an industry mentor. I speak to him about the industry. I speak to him about the trends that are currently occurring within the industry, and how I, as an employee, can contribute to my company to assist the mining industry with what it's going through right now. It's more of a technical mentor, but you can also have a mentor who is a woman who then you say, how do I address my boss who makes comments or derogatory comments to me?
Yeah.
So it's very important to understand that you don't have to have one mentor who is all things to you. You can have multiple mentors who who cater to different needs. And I think it actually is quite important to have different mentors, because there are many different things and many different challenges you're going to encounter in your career that one specific mentor may not have had. So and I also think it's important to have a mentor who's not only in your industry, but outside of your company, who can give you a very objective view. Because I know sometimes when you work with someone, you go and you say, hey, I've got the problem with this. They're like, yeah, me too. So just someone to be objective. But yeah, I think definitely diversify your mentorship base so you can find what you need.
That makes perfect sense. So, I mean, they don't necessarily have to understand how females or how women think, or all those dynamics, because like you said, it could really be technical mentor. I just
need to know. I just need to know, how do I, and you work in a tax environment, how do I, in this sticky situation with the client, how do I go about managing that? That's a technical question. That's got nothing to do with I'm not happy at work, right?
Yeah.
So a mentor who can cater to that need is also very important, because at the end of the day, one of the things we want to do is to take on executive roles. And to take on those executive roles, we have to be technically strong in what we know. So it's very important to be able to work the room in your company and know the right people and have the right conversations. But it's also very important to be technically sound in what you do. And a technical mentor is going to take you there.
Great. I mean, Thando, we've been speaking for an hour now.
So long!
I don't want to keep people on a Friday evening.
Yes.
I just want us to then maybe speak about going forward. Like, what are we supposed to do? Because now we've started this conversation, right? Yeah. And I think we've touched on so many things, right? We've touched on some of the fact that maybe mindsets need to change as women. We need sponsors to be speaking for us, we need awareness in companies. We need awareness with the teams that we work in, that actually, guys, it takes this much to actually, you want me to deliver 3 opinions in 1 week. Please remember that I have a child. Please remember that so many other roles that I need to play. And please remember
other jobs, not roles, jobs.
And then I have to sleep. So we've touched on all these things. And I think that for me, it was a very enlightening conversation. And I'm very happy to have spoken to someone who is in an industry where it's very male dominated, and someone who has worked their way to executive level at such a young age, right? I was going to bring that in.
I'm so old. I'm very old. Ask my brother. My brother thinks I'm ancient.
So I'm really happy that the conversation happened. But I mean, now where do we go? Like, what do we do? And I feel that the conversation obviously must not be a once-off conversation, because when has ever like once-off thing happened?
One conversation solved everything.
And then it so it has to be an ongoing conversation, maybe also with, like I said, other sectors. Like, guys, what do you experience, with engineering? What do you experience as a scientist? What do you experience as an accountant? But yeah, just from the talk we've had now, going forward.
I think like we said in the beginning, I mean, I'm not an expert. I chose this topic because I saw a problem and I thought to myself, well, if I'm gonna do a master's program, I might as well speak to a problem which is near and dear to my heart. And I think when I spoke to a male colleague of mine in the executive team from London, and he said to me, the problems are deep and entrenched within systems of companies.
Yeah.
It's not just a cultural problem. There are clearly systems that are put in place. And he said during apartheid, systems were put in place to ensure white men succeed within a company. And now those systems have, somewhat spilled over to Black men doing well. So it's still a man will do well in certain environments compared to that of women. So there's a lot of deep systematic things which have to be broken down, and those are not going to happen overnight. You and I can go and do it outside JSE. It's not going to fix things.
Nothing.
It's not going to fix anything. But what is important is what we're doing right now. And that's observing that there is a problem, observing that there is a gap, observing that companies have not done the best that they can to create that fertile ground. And women also need to take accountability for their actions as well. And in having the conversation, we empower each other to say, Ayanda, next time when that role opens up and it says 5 years experience and you have 3, just apply. We're empowering each other with the conversations of here's what to look out for, here's what you must know. But as we have these conversations, they hopefully spill over into people who lead us, into people who manage us. And I think it's important as young women to not just have these conversations on these forums, which are outside of work, but to bring them into the workspace. There are many associations that different industries have. I know in the mining industry, we have women in mining, and the conversations are had within women in mining. And many mining companies have a women in mining branch within the company. And the women in mining branch in that company must then go and speak to those executives and say, what are you doing to enhance the female experience in this company? So it's important to have the conversation, but it's important to ensure that the conversation is ongoing within all the spaces in which we occupy. It can't be Ayanda and Tando on a Friday conversation. It needs to be when we're at lunch, we're speaking about it. When we're in executive meetings, we're speaking about it. When we are asked in surveys, we mention it, because the more we speak about it, the more we put the problem in front of people's faces and say, look, you can't ignore it. Companies are going to be forced to look at it and hopefully start making small changes that will create that fertile environment. And most importantly, like I said, when we speak, we empower each other, because knowing that you're going through something at your company, I'm going through something in my company, makes me realize, oh, I'm not alone. Okay, I can speak to Ayanda, I can speak to someone else. It's creating that community. And that's why I'm so grateful to be here. I'm so grateful for this platform. And I really hope that we can continue to have these conversations and continue to bring more and more young women in and hear their voices and hear how they've gone about conducting themselves in their companies and expressing these concerns to management. But I think above all else, as women, we have to be self-starters. We have to see what we want and we have to work for it and we have to go for it. And hopefully the companies that we work for will catch up to our dreams and our aspirations.
I just want to touch on that the conversations, they're empowering. And if you have we have 31 participants, you're empowered. You can go back to work and be like, guys, so even if it's the males, like, guys, so what are we doing to accommodate women? What are we doing to push them? Because this thing of saying, yes, we want women executives, but there is nothing conducive about the working environment to get them there. I think you're so right. These conversations need to go off or into platforms that are responsible for hiring or for promoting or for making or ensuring that women do get to those positions. And yes, again, I really hope, and maybe we should do it as a series, you know?
Yeah, we should. We
Do
definitely
it as
should.
a series.
I think it would be great. Yeah.
Definitely have people come in, and maybe at some point have guys come in and be like,
have guys come in. Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
like,
absolutely.
this is what
absolutely.
I'm doing at work. And, you know, guys around me, this is what they're doing at work, you know?
Because at the end of the day, we don't work in isolation. We work with men.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, a lot of the times, the decisions that are made for women are made by men. So it's important that these are not, and I always say this, like GBV. GBV is not a women's issue. Okay, the underrepresentation of women in executive roles is not a women issue. Okay, we are not choosing to not apply for the roles. We are not being chosen, and that's because men are not engaging us. Men are not asking us what do we need and how can we work together. So I think it's very important to include men in the conversation because men are our allies.
True. And like I said, I think it's quite important. Like you said, if you know I'm dealing with this situation at work now, and Ayanda's also dealing with it, you know, I'm not alone. So I feel like if we bring the men to the fore and they're like, listen, me and my friends, this is what we are doing for awareness and to make sure that women are getting into these roles, then other men will be like, oh, I can actually do that as well. Like, you know, the platform, why not? So the knowledge sharing, the experience sharing will definitely, I think, reach a wider audience. Fully agree. I think let's take these conversations.
And an example of that. So the mining industry has got this forum where all these like big CEOs sit, and one company started doing something for women, and they kind of reported it at this meeting, and then all the other companies were like, we have to do the same thing. That peer pressure of like, oh, well, if that company is doing it, and I think that's what needs to happen in corporates is, you know, one corporate needs to start and to say, we are going to be the employer of choice for everyone. And this is how we make the environment better for our women. If PwC did that, EY will start losing all their women and do the same. And so will KPMG and so on and so forth. So when one leader takes the hard route and says, we're going to implement things to ensure that we bring the best out of our female employees, best believe other companies will follow as well. So we hope that they listen and we hope that they take part in the conversation and want to do better for everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Sandra, thank you so much for having this conversation with me today. I mean, it's a very important conversation, and hope that everybody who watched took it and they are going to definitely put it into practice. And I just want to thank everybody who came on, who listened. Evening.
Hi, Mom.
Oh, yes, your mom is here. Hi, Sandra's mom. Gosh, I'm sure she's so proud. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I really do hope that we were able to reach people in mining as the BMF. Like I said, we are quite inclusive and we really do want to start having a reach everywhere, you know. Quite honestly, before you spoke to me, I didn't know that the BMF, like, we are like non-existent in the mining sector, you know. I didn't know, because I mean, it's one thing for people to know about us, but it's also another thing for people to want to be in the BMF, because I might know, but I'm like, so what would they do for me? You know, I'm sitting here, I'm like, so what are they going to do for me? So I think that you just bringing that to our attention with, guys, yes, Aniko, like, you guys are not.
Aniko.
You need to, you know, so just to have a reach everywhere. So thank you everybody for coming through. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, guys, and we've seen all the lovely messages. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And thank you for having me. And I'll be back.
Yes, we'll definitely have you back. I'm sure by then you will be.
By then, I'll be Patrice. I'll be like, me, I'm Patrice number 2.
Oh my gosh, you're such a joy. Thank you so much. It was great having you.
All right, thank you. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you for joining.
All right then, bye.